Hey guys, and welcome back to my channel. We normally talk about leggings, activewear, occasionally other clothing here, but another one of my passions is hair, specifically air styling hair tools. When the Dyson Airwrap first came out, I was dying to try it, and I've been absolutely in love with my Shark FlexStyle for the past like 3+ years. So when I saw there was a new air styling tool on the market that is one of the most affordable ones yet and had really good reviews, I had to test it for myself because frankly, I don't trust anything until I try it myself. So I'm here to give you my brutally honest review, super in-depth details of the Bondi Boost Everlasting Airstyler system. This video is completely unsponsored. I bought this myself, and I will also be comparing it to my Shark FlexStyle, which I also bought myself. I've already done a video on the Shark FlexStyle versus the Flexfusion, as well as the Shark FlexStyle versus the Dyson Airwrap. I chose to keep my FlexStyle instead of the Dyson Airwrap. I actually like the Shark a little bit better, so if that gives you any background, but the Shark and the Dyson are very similar. The Bondi Boost is the cheapest by far out of all of them. It's a third of the price of the Dyson Airwrap, and it has some different features, and spoiler alert, it surprised me. So I did style one half of my hair with the Bondi Boost and one half with the Shark FlexStyle, and shortly in the video we'll see which one is which, but you can kind of make your judgments on how they look. Keep in mind my hair is probably the longest it's ever been right now. It's literally like basically to my butt, and it's also pretty heavy, so if my hair was a good amount shorter, it would be holding these curls a lot better. This is just kind of how it ends up being when my hair is this long. So we'll be going over price breakdown, setting differences between the Bondi and the Shark, temperature, hair damage, comparing the different attachments. We'll also be comparing the noise between the Shark and the Bondi because a lot of people think the Shark is very loud. And then I'll also be styling my hair side by side so we can see the differences and how they work. So without further ado, let's get into it. And give this video a thumbs up if you like my hair styling videos. I do have fun with these from time to time. So starting out with the price breakdown and what's included in both the Bondi Boost Everlast Styler and the Shark FlexStyle. I'm specifically comparing the Shark FlexStyle, even though I actually use the Flexfusion more, just because the Flexfusion has some additional attachments and they're not as comparable. So the Bondi Boost is $188. Keep in mind, I always suggest buying these things during like big sales, especially like Black Friday, if you could wait. This is totally an unfounded guess, but I would have to guess it'd be like below $150 during Black Friday. So just keep that in mind. Then the list of what it comes with. First of all, I was very pleased to see it comes in this little carrying case, and not only is it a little carrying case, but it is very well designed. It has this little hook that actually my toiletry bag has, which is super convenient. Every time I travel, I just hang up my toiletry bag and I hook it onto something in a hotel bathroom, and then it just stays open like this. It's genius. So we have this top zipper compartment and then the main compartment with a couple little slots that hold all of the attachments. Getting into the attachments, you have the actual unit itself that plugs into the wall. It doesn't have one of those big like blocks in the middle of the charger. I'm not electrical engineering, not my specialty. I don't know what that's for. Then we have two blow dry attachments. You have the angled dryer that allows it to be kind of like a normal hair dryer, and then you have the concentrated nozzle. First we have the angled dryer, then we have the concentrated nozzle. On two brushes, you get two brushes. The first one is a 32mm round brush. It has these wider bristles with a little ball tip at the end, and then the kind of classic plastic bristles, and it's also ceramic on the inside there. Then you also get the 58mm oval brush. So this one is oval, and the same kind of brush makeup as the last one, ceramic on the inside, two different types of plastic bristles. Then lastly, you get two ceramic Airstyler heads, one for right, one for left, so you do have to switch them, which you do have to on the Shark as well. The only one that you don't is the Dyson. I found it strange that they didn't give the diameter measurements of this one. So the circumference is ever so slightly smaller than the Shark, but it is pretty similar. I'm just gonna compare these two while we're at it. So the Bondi Boost is a ceramic, and it's a little bit smoother in transition, and the Shark is just full plastic, and the little ridges are a little bit more prominent. And you can see if we actually line up the curling space, the Shark has about 1/2 inch longer of a barrel. And then looking down the diameters, they are very similar. Then a quick breakdown of the Shark FlexStyle. The Shark FlexStyle is $299. I think you can definitely get it for cheaper these days just because they have the Flexfusion. This one is kind of like their older style. But the Shark, you get the base unit that has the swivel head, which is a big pro. And my Shark came with this kind of paddle brush and then the oval brush. Excuse the fact that there's hair in this, but it's hard to clean these out. You also get the concentrated blow dry attachment with the Shark. Then you get the two 1.25-inch barrels. And just for reference in terms of pricing, the Dyson Airwrap is $599. So the Bondi Boost is less than a third of that. All right, next section on to settings. So the Bondi Boost does have less settings overall than the Shark. First of all, we have the on and off switch in the back here. A little bit sticky of a switch. I wish it was a little bit easier. It is very small, and you are turning on and off a lot, so I just wish it was just a little bit more ergonomic there. Then you have 3 air settings and 3 heat settings. And then you also have the click on, click off area here. And I will say the ease of getting it on and off there, I'm getting better, but you have to press the little release, get it in there, and then twist it. And it just doesn't feel quite as quick and easy as the Shark. And then to get it out, you twist, press, and lift. So there's a bit of a learning curve. Again, doesn't feel quite as easy as the Shark, but I also haven't been using it as long. Then settings on the Shark, we have the on and off, which is just easy to use because it's this larger button and you just don't have to like get your finger in there as much. 3 heat settings, 3 air settings, and then there's also a cool shot. I think the buttons overall are a little bit better on the Shark, and I think overall the unit is definitely a little bit more luxurious on the Shark, but the Shark is also a little bit heavier. So definitely keep that into account. Sometimes heaviness is seen as like luxurious, but you are using it as a hair tool and you gotta hold your arms up. And listen, I go to the gym, so it's not as much of a problem as it used to be, but sometimes your arms get tired when you style your hair, so it is kind of a benefit that it's lighter. Okay, next section is blow drying. So this is how I always start my hair styling. So like I was mentioning with the attachments, you have the angled hair drying attachment. This is probably my go-to just because this is a more simple, easy way to hold the hair dryer. But you do also have the concentrated blow dry nozzle, which is generally what I prefer because I have a lot of hair and it takes a long time to dry it if the air isn't really strong, but you have to hold it kind of sideways like this. It's just not super ergonomic, so I don't love that. The Shark, amongst all of these like air styling tools, the hair dryer is absolutely the best on Shark, and that's one of the reasons why I love the Shark. You have the concentrated attachment and it has this swivel head and it does not compromise the integrity of the device at all. Like I've had this for years and it is literally in peak condition, but it's just so easy to use. And I'll show a little video side by side of me blow drying my hair with the Shark versus the Bondi, and the air power is just better on the Shark. Honestly, it's not bad on the Bondi, but if I was somewhere humid, I would be kind of frustrated with the speed of blow drying on the Bondi Boost. So Bondi Boost is definitely not bad by any means, but in terms of blow drying, I definitely think the Shark wins that one. Next, moving on to noise, I would say subjectively, the Bondi does sound a little bit quieter, but as a woman in STEM, we do things the scientific way here. So I got my watch out and did a little decibel measurement of the noise. I held the Shark and the Bondi Boost a couple inches away from my watch with the noise setting, and I did it with both the air settings and also the curlers because the noise is a little bit different. And the Shark with the blow dry setting was about 96 decibels. That's kind of when it leveled out to be. And the blow dry on the Bondi was about 97. So I would consider that the same between the two. So in terms of blow drying, really they're both about the same noise level. But with the curlers, the Shark was about 100 decibels and the Bondi Boost was like 90 to 95. So it was a little bit more quiet. I do think I noticed that when I used it. So overall, about the same. The Bondi Boost is a little bit more quiet. Always keep in mind with noise that these things can cause hearing damage, especially above 90 decibels. So just keep that in mind, you know. Sometimes I consider wearing earplugs while doing my hair, which is very extra, but I don't want to lose my hearing because I'm already surrounded by high-pitched noises at work. And then the second part of our little scientific measurements, I also did use my infrared heat sensor to measure the heat of these things because a lot of people like to say like, oh, like this one doesn't cause as much heat damage because it keeps the temperature down more, but then no one actually measures the heat. So I measured the temperatures for you guys. Based off my brief internet searching, including scientific papers, it seemed that significant hair damage happens above 390 degrees Fahrenheit. And generally these air styling heat tools use a lot less heat than a traditional hair tool because you're also just relying on that air. But again, we did do some measurements. Again, I did the blow dryer and the curlers. So with the Bondi, the max temp of the blow dryer was around 150 to 170. It did kind of sway within that range, and this is in degrees Fahrenheit. And the Shark max blow dry temp was 130 to 140. So that is a little bit of a difference. They're both very well within the safe ranges for temperature in terms of not causing damage to the hair. And then the curlers, the Bondi max temp was 230 degrees. And I will say like the temperature sensor tends to bounce around a lot with most hair tools, but with the curlers specifically on the Bondi Boost, because they're ceramic, which we'll talk about, it actually was a very stable heat temperature. So it stayed really pretty level around 230 degrees. In the Shark max temp for the curlers was between 220 and 230. So if you had any questions about which one is safer for hair, honestly, they're about the same. I wouldn't really expect one to cause more damage than the other. As always, use a heat protectant before using your heat tools. That definitely helps. All right, next we're moving on to brush attachments. The Bondi Boost, like I said earlier, the oval brush and the smaller round brush, and they actually have ceramic on the inside instead of plastic. Honestly, I don't really use these brush tools very much. I think they really speed up damaging your hair. We're always told not to brush our hair hair when it's wet because it's more susceptible to stretching, breaking, damaging the hair strand. So if you think about it, we're using these on wet hair, really like pulling a lot. So honestly, I see a lot more damage on my hair when I use tools like these. So I tend to skip them, but I did just want to do a quick comparison. This didn't come in my original Shark FlexStyle package, but I did purchase the round brush attachment. In comparing the Bondi Boost round brush to the Shark, I actually really liked this one. I think you can definitely tell that the ceramic on the inside helps with smoothing the hair. And I also liked the size of this one better, and I just didn't feel like it was pulling my hair quite as much. Just the distribution of the bristles, and honestly, these just have a little bit more like stiffness to them, and I like the little balls at the end. These just, I don't know, they kind of scratch a little bit too much. I never was really a huge fan of the brush attachments with the Shark, but I felt like the oval attachments got a pretty similar result. I think really if you're between the Bondi Boost or the Shark in terms of the brush attachments, not really a huge deal, but I do kind of slightly lean towards the Bondi Boost just because I prefer the size of the round brush, and I like that they had the ceramic on the inside. I just think I got a slightly smoother result. So kind of a tie, but Bondi Boost is like a little bit above. All right, next section is the curling attachments. This is where I get really passionate about this because I think this is just the easiest way to do your hair. I can style my entire head, I'm getting ahead of myself, in like 15 minutes from wet to fully curled. And you get this like bouncy blowout look that lasts for days. So I absolutely love the air styling tools. So a quick comparison between the two here. Like I was saying, the Shark is about ½ an inch longer of actual curling space, but I truly didn't feel like it made a huge difference. I actually felt like I could use slightly larger pieces of hair on the Bondi Boost. And again, keep in mind, I'm not sponsored by any of these. If anything, I feel like I have more incentive to like the Shark better because I've been using and loving that one for that long and I spent more money on it. But I was truly impressed with the curling abilities of the Bondi Boost ceramic stylers. That gets us into our next point. I should be holding them like this because this is the Shark side and this is the Bondi Boost side. I did put this little piece behind my ears, so don't really judge that one piece, but I think they're overall pretty similar. Anyways, with the Shark, it is a completely plastic barrel. It's never really bothered me too much or been too much of an issue, but the Bondi Boost is a ceramic barrel. Biggest thing I'll say here is you definitely have to be careful and not touch this part because it does just retain the heat more. So whenever you're putting it on and off the actual hairdryer, you just really have to make sure you're touching the plastic parts. But for both of them, you do have to switch the left and right way, depending on which side of the hair you're working on. I'd always wondered why people said that ceramic was good for your hair. So I did a little quick search about it in case you were curious, because everyone's like, ion technology, ion technology. I'm like, what about the ions? Okay, I have a minor in chemistry. I know about ions. Anyways, apparently wet or humid hair does carry a positive charge to it, and ceramic gives off negative ions, anions. I was like, wow, anions, cations, we're bringing me back to chemistry class. So the negative ions that the ceramic gives off actually breaks down the water molecules into smaller particles, which not only speeds up the drying, but also eliminates that frizz because the frizz is a result of having that positive charge. So that's kind of how it works. I feel like I still don't fully understand it, but there weren't a lot of scientific articles going into like the main details about that, which I feel like they should because I would love to learn about that. Next, moving on to diameter, the Shark is 1.25 inches. If I had to guess, the Bondi Boost would be about 1.2, just because the circumference was about 1/4 of an inch smaller. So I could do the whole geometry calculation, but it's just a little bit smaller, basically the same though. All right, now getting into the action about how these actually performed side by side. Again, I did my whole right side of my head with the Shark and I did the whole left side with the Bondi Boost. And you can just tell comparing them side by side, I was very impressed with the suction of the Bondi Boost. I feel like with the Shark, I do have to kind of guide my hair into the airflow a little bit more and kind of really work it to get all of the ends properly wrapped. It's not a lot of work and it doesn't take a lot of time, but I didn't have to do that like at all with the Bondi Boost. So I felt like it actually wrapped the hair more efficiently. Another note, I felt like the Bondi Boost kind of wrapped my hair like upwards towards the tip and also wrapped the hair more like stacked over top of each other, which may be a little bit less efficient for drying, although I didn't notice it because my hair is like 80% dry by the time I do use it. But the Shark, the hair kind of spreads out more along the barrel and kind of pushes it down more. And I feel like when I use the Shark, I had more occasions of some of the hair actually coming off the actual barrel and onto the unit itself, which I felt like didn't always make for the best curls. Even when I used larger sections on the Bondi Boost, that didn't happen. I don't think I ever had a case where it wasn't all on the barrel when I was done curling it. So even though it is a little bit shorter, I didn't have to worry about the length of the barrel. And then the overall curl result, I think you can definitely tell a difference, at least before I brush my hair. The Bondi Boost, you get a shiny, almost like pin curl type curl. And with the Shark, it's a little bit more like spread out. You can tell it was more spread out along the barrel, almost looks a little bit frizzier. But after it's all brushed out, I'll show a clip of the final result between the two, brushing them out. They look pretty similar. So again, ease of use of the curling attachments, super easy. With a normal curling iron, honestly, I kind of struggle with the whole process with it. I do like a curling wand as well that doesn't have the clamp, but then you're using both your arms. It's really tiring. This, you just use one arm, you turn it on, you wrap your hair, you bring it all the way up to the base, and then this one does not have that cool shot setting. That is a big difference between these in the curling, but honestly, I never knew how much the cool shot did, because on the Dyson and the Shark, the cool shot is actually just a lack of heat shot. It's not actually cold. So I don't know how much it actually did. Anyways, then you just turn it off, pull it out. It takes less than 10 seconds per strand. I recorded myself start to finish, wet hair to full styling, and it was literally 15 minutes. 3 minutes of rough styling, then like 12 minutes of actual styling my hair. Like, it does not take long. I did just want to give a quick tutorial on how I style my hair. If you guys are looking for a full hair care routine and everything, I will link that below. I did film one like 8 months ago at this point. Seems like it was just yesterday. Anyways, how I personally use a tool like this. After I wash my hair, I use a leave-in product, and then I do a rough dry, really making sure I get those deep layers in the back, and I want to make sure my hair is about 75 to 80% dry. Then I section my hair off into 3 layers. I do the bottom, middle, and then the top. I spray each section with the heat protectant, then I brush through it before I start doing any styling. That just helps the hair be nice and smooth. Then I take each piece and I turn the Airstyler on, and then you kind of feed the ends of the hair to it, and then I'll show a clip. You just kind of move the styler up the hair so it just all wraps nicely around it. This is why it's a nice like one arm job. You don't have to be like holding your arms at any uncomfortable positions. And then I hold it honestly just for a few seconds. If the styler has a cool shot, I will do the cool shot. If not, like this one, I just turn it off. Then I pull this out. It leaves a nice curl. I do that across the whole section. I do a little light hairspray on each section, and then I just keep going. Then I try to leave my hair in what I call George Washington mode for as long as I can. I'll do my makeup, so at least like 30 minutes. Then I will brush it out. I used to never brush my curls out, but now I always do. It looks better if you brush them out. Doesn't last as long, but you get this nice blowout look, just smoother. And that's how I use these stylers. If you haven't used one yet, I love them. All right, and lastly, how long lasting it is. So anytime I use any of these air styling tools, I do have clips right after I use the Bondi Boost to style my entire head, and then also about 5 hours later, and then 2 days later. And you can see across all of these, my hair is still curled. I do sleep with my hair in a little loose bun at the top of my head, and that honestly kind of keeps the curls going. I find once I curl my hair, it just wants to stay curled. So if I put it in a clip or a bun, when I take it out, it just kind of holds that curl. And again, keep in mind, my hair is about as long and heavy as it's ever been. So if you do have shorter hair, you're going to get much more of a curled result. Right now, my hair isn't super curled because it's just very heavy. So overall, for the curler section, I honestly am going to give it to the Bondi Boost. I really think it's easier to curl my hair with that. And I just love how glossy the curls come out like right after I use it. So really overall, they're pretty similar, but a slight advantage to the Bondi Boost. So that is it, comparing all of the features of the Bondi Boost to the Shark FlexStyle. Honestly, overall, I think they're both great options. If I was just looking at the Shark FlexStyle versus the Bondi Boost, if you're mostly looking to curl, I would get the Bondi Boost. If blow dry strength really matters to you, I do think Shark has a leg up there. And then if you're looking for a really comprehensive hair styler, I love my Shark FlexFusion. I have another review on that. Like I said, it has wet and dry stylers, and it also has a built-in like air straightener, so you do get a little bit more bang for your buck. But overall, Bondi Boost gets my stamp of approval. I think they did a great job. All right, guys, I hope you enjoyed this video. Give it a thumbs up if you did, and let me know if you want me to try any other hair tools on this channel. I definitely need a haircut because it's been a little while, and that would probably make it a little bit easier to tell if the curls stay. But thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you next time. Bye.